Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about astrology and the death of Karen Carpenter. Now, many of you, or some of you may know, some of you may not know, Karen Carpenter was, of course, she was a legendary singer, and she died tragically on February 4th, 1983. There were some issues that were at least that there was some connection to, it was like the anorexia nervosa or whatever. She was anorexic. She suffered from anorexia. She had I guess she felt that she was just never quite thin enough, and sadly when somebody succumbs to that kind of illness, it can be, I mean, in this case it was perilous, and I mean they could become very consumptive, even emaciated looking, I would think, and it's just terrible, very tragic, traumatic, devastating what happened. I'm going to talk about some things in her natal chart and some transits that this might have been attributed to. Now, first thing I'll look at when I look at her, her ascendant being in Cancer, 0 degrees. Of course, the ascendant's the physical body. 0 degrees could be a critical degree. She also had Uranus by her ascendant as well, and of course, I mean, this could indicate unusual issues with the physical body, and of course Cancer is connected with the stomach, can be connected with the stomach and food as well, so it's not really that shocking that she had an unusual situation with it as far as an eating disorder goes. But there's also other indicators in the chart, and at least one other. There was one. She also has Ceres in her sixth house in her chart. Now, I believe there is certain significance with this because Ceres, of my understanding, had been originally considered an asteroid. Then it was upgraded, I guess you could say, to a dwarf planet, so it could have certain significance. I mean, Pluto is seen as a dwarf planet, so it's gotta be, you would think it should have at least comparable importance in astrology, like to Pluto. So, or as significant as Pluto. So anyway, the thing about it is Ceres in astrology can be connected with eating afflictions, eating disorders, and she had it in her sixth house of health in Sagittarius, intercepted as well, and it shows how this could have been. I mean, Sagittarius could be, this issue was on a very grand scale, and it was not far from her natal Chiron. Now I know natal Chiron was like about maybe 7 degrees away from her Ceres in her chart. Now that may not be seen as a conjunction in astrology when you're talking about the Chiron and Ceres, but the thing about it is, I don't think we could say definitively that just because you go, like in this example, Chiron being around 7 degrees away from Ceres in her chart, did that necessarily mean that it's not picking up a vibration? Chiron could give added wounds and suffering to something. Ceres in astrology, I mean, can be associated with, diminished or dissipated self-esteem, and so you can really put all this together. So it's not surprising she had a health related issue connected with an eating disorder, and being Sagittarius, sadly a very prodigious one, I think that could have factored into that. Now, another thing I noticed sadly in her chart is that in her natal chart she has Saturn in Virgo in the fourth house, making an opposition to her sun in Pisces. Now, when people have Saturn in adverse aspect to their sun, and even or to their ascendant even, I believe that could manifest and really a lot of dissatisfaction with how you may appear, because there might be, you might be in this constant state of fear or trepidation how you appear, because Saturn could be connected with fear, and of course Saturn in Virgo can be difficulties, I would say, with worrying. So this really could have intensified some worrisome issues with how she appeared. Sun in Pisces may want to always have that ideal appearance, wanting to be not necessarily perfect, but whatever the ideal appearance that she wanted to have in being. I mean, Pisces, of course, could be very unrealistic, and it could be idealistic energy, but unrealistic. And her appearance that she wanted to be, sadly, might have manifested in this case of really something very unrealistic in becoming very thin and really maybe consumptive even as well. I think what may have happened was, we'll see, transit Saturn in 1974 was in her first house for a good part of that year. So I think maybe that might have been a period when she had really lost a lot of weight. In that time, it would not shock me if that's the way it went down with her. But also, too, I noticed in her chart, sadly, she has Pluto conjunct the moon in Leo in the second house of self-worth and self-esteem. So, I mean, Pluto conjunct the moon in some cases could indicate a death that might be tied into some eating issues or some issues with food or the stomach. Being in Leo could be one very dramatic on a very grand scale, and one that could gain a lot of notoriety, recognition, and attention. And you're talking about Pluto in astrology. Pluto can just downright eradicate and obliterate. And it might have, she was just basically obliterating whatever food would go in, would be coming out, would be eliminated, sadly. And the thing I want to get to as well, going back to that Saturn in Virgo in her fourth house, is interesting as well, because Saturn, of course, could indicate, Saturn in Virgo can sometimes indicate difficulties or even debilitations with the intestines. Of course, is connected with Virgo. It wouldn't surprise me that she would have some issues with that, considering the situation with this anorexia nervosa, or if I don't know if I'm pronouncing right, but you know what I'm saying, the anorexic issue that she had. And the thing about this too is there were some transits that were very sad and to me very depressing that took place at the time of her death on February 4th, 1983. One of them, she had transit North Node in Cancer close to her ascendant, which of course is the physical body. When you have the North Node being involved in a transit, this could suggest issues one may have to confront. Now, this could have been some issue that she may have had to confront, of course, with the physical body, with her life, with her vitality, and being in Cancer. Of course, Cancer is not known to have the strongest constitution, but anyway, this is sadly how this may have manifested with her, is that she may have had to confront some issues with the physical body, in this case a stomach issue that could be connected with the stomach. So sadly, she also had at this time, she had a transit Venus, I believe fairly close to her sun, natal sun in Pisces. And the way that could manifest in astrology, I mean, well, in this case, I mean, when she had died, there was one source that stated that this was attributed to, at least one source, I mean, that I know, that said it was attributed to something diabetic. And of course, Venus can be connected, with sweets. And I mean, Libra is the sign that could be connected with diabetes, but Venus, the ruler, can be connected with it as well, I would say. And the fact is, you have transit Venus near your sun. I mean, sometimes this could indicate an issue with the physical body that could be Venus related. In this case, perhaps this is being something diabetic, very high blood sugar. Now, she had very distorted level of high blood sugar when she died. Now, the thing is, these are two transiting planets, I understand, but at the time, in transit Venus was square transit Jupiter, and sometimes that could indicate it more, could be more prevalent with people in general having distorted amounts of high blood sugar, levels or what have you. And being in Pisces, being involved, of course, could be very confounding, and ones that could be just really mind-boggling, basically. I mean, sadly, another thing too, I noticed that she has two planets in Libra. They're malefic planets, Mars and Neptune. And Neptune, of course, could be about general disease, weaknesses, and you have it in Libra. And Libra, of course, could be connected with diabetes. Now, she had died with the high, very high blood sugar level. Now, I don't know if she really had this actual, consistent, diabetic issue, but I know at the time she died that, I mean, according to Wikipedia, she did have a high blood sugar level, and another source had stated that it was stated that she died as a result of diabetes. But what this was, though, this was still at least an indirect connection with the anorexia disorder that she had, sadly. She also had, at the time of her death, she had transit Chiron and Taurus by her 12th house. And 12th house, of course, could be associated with endings. And Chiron, of course, could be about suffering. You have and Taurus is connected with the thyroid gland. Now, toward her latter part of her life, believed she was getting some something with thyroid replacement pills or something, or some pills that were associated with the thyroid. And of course, this could have contributed to her suffering. You have transit Chiron in Taurus by your 12th house. This could be an indicator of some suffering associated with an ending, secret sorrows that may be tied into something Taurus related. In this case, it was something with the thyroid. May have been a contributing factor then. So another thing too, she also had the ruler of her 8th house in her 4th house of the home and the stomach. My understanding is she had collapsed, I think it was in a family member's home. So some connection with the family is where she wound up. I mean, she passed, said she may have died right then. I'm not really sure if she died right on that spot or not, but the death was still still connected with a home one way or another. Her family, it was in her when she fell down. It was in her I think it was her mother's home. And really, there's not much else I can really add to this. She has Venus in Aquarius in the 8th house of death. And the thing about that is that, of course, Venus ruling Libra can be associated with the sugar levels, could be connected with, play some role in diabetes. And of course, Aquarius is very unpredictable energy. It's very unusual. It's not shocking that there was a very inordinate amount of blood sugar in her at the time, or her blood sugar level was at an exorbitant amount, or the number was exorbitant, or what have you. She I guess you could say her blood sugar level was exorbitant, is what I'm saying, but you understand anyway. The thing about it is too, and really that's really pretty much what I wanted to say as far as Karen Carpenter and her death. And it's sad that somebody, she seemed like such a beautiful person inside and out, that she had to be taken away at such an early stage. And anybody out there that may have some eating disorder or affliction, or it's some compulsive issue, with that, just you really, if you need the assistance, you need to acknowledge that there is a problem, and you're doing something to yourself where you're causing yourself to be ridiculously consumptive and thin when it's not necessary, and it becomes unhealthy. You need to, obviously you need to seek some kind of help. And the first thing is confronting the issue and acknowledging that there actually is a problem, and not ignoring it, not being oblivious to it. Acknowledging that there is an issue, dilemma that has to be resolved, and that it needs to be taken care of. It's like, people that are alcoholics, a lot of them, some people won't even admit that they have an issue. It's like, if an alcoholic, if somebody has to have a drink a day or 2 drinks a day, it's that need for it could still indicate alcoholism. It's not always, alcoholism is not always identified by drinking, preposterous amounts of alcohol at one time. It could just be that need to have it, on a day-to-day basis. That could define it right there. So, and it's almost, it's like if you have some kind of anorexic issue, and in fact you need to do something, perhaps even if it was once a day, and you needed to binge and purge or whatever whatever they do, that need could still, I believe, could define it. So you have to acknowledge that there is some assistance, and acknowledge that there is an issue, there is a problem, and that you'll do something to eradicate the issue sooner or later. Because in this case, sadly, with Karen Carpenter, this turned out to be something perilous. So anyway. And I believe it was something like heart failure was also part of, her death as well. And again, she had Pluto conjunct the moon in her chart. Remember that the moon is public. Pluto is death, and Leo does rule the heart, so you can do the math. Pluto also, of course, the ruler of her first house, the Senate, the physical body. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.